Resident Evil 4.
Our story focuses on a humble tourist named Leon visiting the beautiful vistas of the Spanish countryside.
When suddenly,
A bunch of men show up and try to put their worm in him. I mean, it is Spain, though, so that kind of goes with the territory. From here, the story evolves into a deep commentary on the dangers of groupthink and cult mentality, bowing to the whims of a charismatic demagogue, leaving paused rational thought by the wayside. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's about the dangers of vaccines and how they give you autism. I am a master of human social interaction.
did somebody say Gundam Marathon? Why would I say hello? I've already seen you this week. There aren't enough train sets in the world to satisfy my lust for locomotion.
Anyway, in-game, you shoot this guy enough, and then he doubles over and a worm sprouts out of his back. I always thought this was pretty cool, so I decided to make my own. I had this giant zombie lying around, so I thought I could put that to really good use for this. Using a shitty hand drill, I decided to put tiny holes into each of the large gaping wounds in this creature. My plan was to thread bits of armature wire through the holes to act as anchor points for the tentacles that I would add to this guy. During this process, I learned that superglue will take, at least 10 seconds to bond two solid objects together, and 0 seconds to bond two fingers together.
Oh fuck, ow, 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 fuck! No!
With the anchor points in, I was ready to roll out some tentacles.
That's what the kids are calling it these days.
I've found that air dry clay is great for making tiny customizations because you don't have to worry about baking it. It just dries in place, and it's actually pretty strong. I felt like that arm tentacle needed a little bit of extra jazz, so I took a pair of wooden beads, kind of thickened it out a little bit, and made it kind of like a central head for the worm. I primed it and got all my paints ready to go. I had actually gotten through painting all of the tentacles when I realized
it's free real estate.
So all of this paint work was scrapped in favor of a new plan. Probably a good thing too, because that pink is just oof. No wash was going to save that. I wanted a freaky mouth coming out of his belly, so I made a 4-pronged starfish shape, transplanting it onto the stomach. Now, I didn't need any anchor points for this because of all of the crevices in the stomach area. I was actually just able to force the clay in there. It did shrink a little as it dried, but it still ain't going nowhere. Ugh, that nose ain't happening either. A series of holes was put into each of the mouth parts, followed by a repriming of the entire figure to be painted once again. For the tentacle color this time, I added a little extra yellow and brown to the mix, along with some gray, severely improving the color quality that I was going for. The base coat for the skin was a light gray, which ended up being a little darker because of the gray primer beneath, a gentle touch of black for the eyes, and a tap of white for the teeth. I then installed the other teeth. Now these were made of polyclay instead of air dry clay. Polyclay is baked in an oven, and by the time it's finished baking, it actually has a consistency of solid plastic. I started with a yellow-white mix for the clay, and when I baked it, it actually got burnt in the oven a little bit, which made the color look better. To attach them, I'm applying a dab of craft glue, putting them into the guide holes that I had previously drilled. This was one of the more challenging parts of the build because sometimes I couldn't find the hole. I'd say this turned out pretty well. I didn't want just a hollow void for the bead eyes, so I put a dab of craft glue in each of the worm eyes. Once it dries, it'll have a nice, dirty, clear look. His stupid face was bothering me. I felt it was throwing off the balance of the piece, just kind of distracting from the giant face down below, so I gave him a mask, painted it green to match his pants, and threw a little cult insignia on the front. I also didn't prime it. I went with brown with a touch of gray for the base, and then dry brushed the rest of the figure with gray with a touch of brown. My final touch was throwing some craft glue in the mouth to make it a little more mucusy. After that dried, I threw on a healthy coating of varnish and waited for that to dry. Speaking of cults, this guy looks like he had a really bad time at catechism. Check this out, no more spinning pill bottles. 360 degrees, 4 turns per minute of pure rotational action, thanks to an anonymous donor. I forgot about the dark wash, so I just went ahead and threw that on after the glaze. It looks like during the wash process I might have re-moisturized that craft glue, which is why it's cloudy once again, but I'm just going to give it 10 hours and assume it'll be clear again. In-game, they call this guy El Gigante. That was my nickname in high school.